Hello there. And now we have some breaking terror news on the alleged Southport murderer and on the plight of Tommy Robinson, who is now, today, at greatly increased risk in prison. First to the alleged perpetrator of the Southport stabbings, that horrific event where 3 young girls were stabbed to death. The event that led to the so-called mis- and disinformation and the Keir Starmer crackdown on the so-called far right. Well, the teenage suspect allegedly involved, 18-year-old Axel Raducubana, now reportedly faces more charges, one of them a terror-based charge. On searching his home, the police found what is said to be a biological toxin in contravention of the Biological Weapons Act 1974 and an Al-Qaeda training manual. And this cannot possibly be regarded as arrestable fake news or mis- or disinformation, because it's being reported by the BBC. The teenager accused of the stabbing murders of 3 young girls in Southport has been charged with producing the poison ricin and possessing a military study of an Al-Qaeda training manual, it reports. And here's the press statement from Chief Constable Serena Kennedy that tells us to not speculate. So be warned.
Today, the Crown Prosecution Service has authorised Axel Raducubana, aged 18, from Lancashire, to be charged with 2 further offences. Axel Raducubana already faces 3 charges of murder, 10 charges of attempted murder and 1 charge of possession of a knife, all relating to the incident at Hart Street on the 29th of July 2024. The 2 further offences relate to evidence obtained by Merseyside Police during searches of Axel Raducubana's home address as part of a lengthy and complex investigation which has been ongoing since the 29th of July. The additional charges are the production of a biological toxin, namely ricin, contrary to Section 1 of the Biological Weapons Act 1974, and possession of information, namely a PDF file entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual, likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing to commit an act of terrorism, contrary to Section 58 of the Terrorism Act 2000. Raducubana will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court by video link tomorrow. Following announcement of further charges, today I want to reassure the communities of Southport and the communities of Merseyside that we are committed to getting justice for the families of Bibi, Elsie and Alice, the 10 victims who were injured at Hart Street and the other 16 people who were present on that day. We are also committed to being open and transparent with our communities. However, I am sure you will appreciate that we also need to make sure that we do not prejudice this trial. You may have seen speculation online that the police are deciding to keep information from the public. This is certainly not the case. We have been given extensive guidance by the Crown Prosecution Service in relation to what we can say publicly to ensure the integrity of the court proceedings are protected. And therefore we are restricted in what we can share with you now the proceedings are live. Following the events of Monday the 29th of July, searches of Axel Raducubana's home address resulted in an unknown substance being found. Testing confirmed the substance as ricin. We have worked extensively with partners to establish that there was a low to very low risk to the public, and I want to make that reassurance clear today. I can also tell you that there was no ricin present at Hart Street. When ricin was discovered, all necessary steps were taken so that we could be sure that no one was at risk. This was a multi-agency response. Expert advice and guidance was received and adhered to throughout the investigation. In the days following, Merseyside Police worked extensively with our partners, including Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, North West Ambulance Service, Sefton Council, West Lancashire Borough Council, Counter-Terrorism Policing North West, Counter-Terrorism Policing Headquarters, the UK Health Security Agency, the Crown Prosecution Service, NHS England, the National CBRN Centre, the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, and the Ministry of Defence, to identify if there was any risk to victims, local communities, and specialist professionals in attendance at Hart Street and Old School Close. At this point, it's particularly appropriate to recognise the support that we've had from our colleagues in the emergency services, local authorities and counter-terrorism policing. That support has included forensic experts and digital investigators, and that support has been in place since the initial stages of the investigation and continues. I want to reassure our communities that we will continue to work in partnership with all of our partners, and we are absolutely committed to keeping our communities safe. At this time, counter-terrorism policing has not declared the events of the 29th of July a terrorist incident. I recognise that these new charges may lead to speculation. The matter for which Axel Rudikabana has been charged under the Terrorism Act does not require motive to be established. For a matter to be declared as a terrorist incident, motivation would need to be established. I would strongly advise anyone against speculating as to the motivation in this case. The criminal proceedings against Axel Rudikabana are live, and he has a right to a fair trial. It is extremely important that there is no reporting, commentary, or sharing of information online that could prejudice these proceedings. I want to remind everyone that the trial is scheduled for January next year. Since the 29th of July, my officers and staff have been working diligently in conjunction with colleagues from counter-terrorism, and they are continuing to assess evidential material which we have recovered to ensure all the evidence is available to the Crown Prosecution Service, and the details of the case will come out in court. My plea is to be patient. Don't engage in rumour and speculation. Don't believe everything you read on social media. We must not lose sight of the families of Elsie, Bibi and Alice who are still grieving, and the families and those victims who were present at Hart Street on the 29th of July. We need to do the right thing to ensure that the justice process is not prejudiced.
So according to Chief Constable Serena Kennedy from Merseyside Police, Rudikabana faces these two new charges: the production of a biological toxin, namely ricin, contrary to Section 1 of the Biological Weapons Act 1974, and the possession of information likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing an act of terrorism, contrary to Section 58 of the Terrorism Act 2000. And according to reports, the latter is a PDF document called Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual. Now, one thing I'm learning is that if you see a very photogenic image of an alleged perpetrator in the UK press. Now on to another pressing but connected issue, that of Tommy Robinson. Because Tommy Robinson is now in danger within our prison system. Here's the latest from his team via X. Admin post. Huge update. Today we've spoken to Tommy, and the latest information is as follows. He's currently safe in the segregated wing he served his last sentence in. However, the governor of Belmarsh High Security Prison has told him he must move for monetary reasons ASAP. Either into the main prison system, which comes at a huge security risk as the prison is filled with the worst jihadis the country has. Or go down the block, which is a small cell with no bed, TV or anything, which also leaves him at risk psychologically and physically, as the block has inmate cleaners, etc. The same prison is holding the Southport child killer. Does this monster deserve better privileges than Tommy, who is in there for mere civil offences, not criminal? He's also been told any visits he has, even with family, must be closed, i.e. behind a screen, treating him like Hannibal Lecter for showing a film. If this is true, and I do have to ask that for my own protection, if this is true, it is thoroughly indefensible, totally immoral. The establishment deserves nothing now but contempt. Surely this should have been made explicitly clear to the court at the trial yesterday. It might have altered their view of the sentence. No more proof of an establishment stitch-up is now required. So much for human rights and legal certainty in the UK. Free Tommy Robinson. Yes, the only true route the establishment now has is to free Tommy today. And now we go international. Oh, that someone had the vitamins to do this in the UK. Geert Wilders has brokered an historic agreement with the Netherlands coalition government for a crackdown on mass migration and asylum seeking in the Netherlands. The Netherlands government has passed the Asylum Emergency Measures Act, which introduces new restrictions on mass migration into the country. All pushed by Geert Wilders, the leader of the Party for Freedom, the PVV, that caused such an upset when they won the most seats in the last election. And now Geert Wilders is the power broker. And the woke lefties in the Netherlands and the wider EU are not happy. So from next month, the Netherlands government can deport Syrian migrants back to areas of Syria that they deem as safe. And they will be prevented from applying for asylum, even those who already have temporary residence permits. The new asylum permits will only last 3 years instead of for 5. The country's borders will also be strengthened, and, in a move that will send woke blood pressure soaring, municipal governments will no longer be required to provide refugee accommodation. Now, there were other measures that Geert Wilders wanted to include, but they were removed as part of the coalition horse trading. But Breitbart reports that these might now be reintroduced in new legislation later. Things like strict limits on family reunification. After all, it is a bit strange that families split in one place so as to reunify in another, doesn't it? And a happy Wilders put out on X that I went to great lengths to make this happen. I will keep my promise to you, the strictest asylum policy ever. As well as, actions speak louder than words, Dutch people back in first place. Words that will send a shudder down the spine of the hardcore socialist in the Netherlands. As one suspects, they are identical to the lefties we have in the UK. You know, the people who want to put everyone else on the planet before us in the queue. In fact, there's no queue for them, only a queue for us. And the EU Commission will not be happy either. The Netherlands government has written to the Eurocrats demanding an opt-out from the new Brussels migration rules in order to relieve the pressure on the Netherlands' public housing, healthcare and education that mass migration is causing in the country. Oh, that a UK government would do the same. But we know that they will not.